Hi, my friends, and welcome to Master of Horror, where I give you the scariest paranormal true stories that I've ever come by. Dive deep with me into the depths of the unknown with these three true paranormal stories. Number 65. True, scary paranormal story number 1: The Entity in the Doorway. When I was about 19 years old, I went to visit my girlfriend Valerie. One night, it actually got pretty late, around 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock a.m. So that's when her parents decided to let me spend the night, but only if we promised not to lock the bedroom door, since we weren't married yet. She lived in a 2-bedroom, small, older house. There was a hallway in between both rooms with the restroom in the middle. We got ready to go to sleep, and I made my bed on the floor while Val was going to sleep in her own bed. I was laying on the floor right next to Val, with my head about a foot away from the bedroom door. After we pillow talked for about an hour, I noticed that she started to fall asleep. That's when I decided to go to sleep, and I began to slowly doze off. That's when I heard someone walking in the hallway towards the bedroom we were sleeping in. It was pitch dark in the room. They didn't have carpet in the room. Rather, it was wood panel floors, so I could hear the floor creaking. I figured it must be her parents checking to make sure we were not sleeping in the same bed together. Then the doorknob slowly turned and the door opened with a creaking noise. I kept my eyes closed, hoping that her parents would leave once they saw that I was asleep on the floor. I was surprised when the door stayed open. Whoever it was, or whatever it was only inches away from my head. I was beginning to get worried and confused because whoever it was not leaving the doorway. I felt as if I was being watched. When 10 minutes passed, that's when I could no longer fake my sleep. I was beginning to truly get scared. Then something happened that I will never forget till this day. I heard a low, long growl. I could feel my heart beating through my body. The room got extremely cold at that moment. Then finally, after about 15 minutes of torture, the bedroom door slowly shut. It took me about an hour or so just to fall asleep. The following morning, I asked Valerie's parents if they checked on us the previous night, and they said they never left their bedroom. That's when I got goosebumps all over my body, and I knew it was something paranormal. To this very day, I cannot explain what happened that night, and what made that growl, and what was it doing the whole time it was standing in the doorway. Scary, true, paranormal story number 2, Chased by a UFO. In 1965, me and my father were coming home from our Wednesday church service. We were driving down a long stretch of road. We were headed to our house in the country area. It was about 10 o'clock p.m. We were pretty tired and were just trying to make it home. While we were driving, I happened to look up and noticed a flickering red and yellow light in the sky. I looked harder, and that's when I noticed it was slowly moving. It was about 2 miles away or so. I showed my dad, and he gazed up at it, and we were wondering what it could be. I told him it looked like a UFO. That's when it quickly vanished. But about 5 minutes later, while we were driving on the same road, we noticed the same light flickering, but this time it was in the middle of the road. I couldn't believe my eyes what I was seeing. It was just sitting there. As we drove closer, our jaws dropped in amazement because it was clear to us that it was an actual UFO. A real UFO with the brightest lights I've ever seen, circling around the spacecraft. We were parked there in front of the UFO, not moving at all. I told my dad, what do we do? Because it was literally blocking us from getting to our house. After sitting there for a couple of minutes and not saying anything, my father did the unthinkable, something that I will never forget to this day. He slammed on the gas straight towards the UFO. The car went full throttle and drove straight towards the spacecraft that was just sitting there in the middle of the road. I thought we were going to crash and die. Just seconds before hitting the UFO, it launched up in the air and took off. I do not know why my dad did what he did. The truth is, we could have literally died that night. As we were racing home and were almost about 2 minutes away from our house, we noticed the same UFO popped up right behind us and was following us. Then it took off in front of us and left us behind. As soon as we made it home, we noticed the UFO was hovering right above our house. We were wondering, how did the UFO know that we lived there? Even though we lived in the country, there were other houses in the area. My dad told me to stay in the car. As he got out of the car, he slammed the door and ran into the house to get his gun. I was petrified as I was staring up at the UFO. While my dad was inside the house, I rolled down my window and I looked around, and that's when I saw 3 or 4 human-like creatures standing around the bushes that surrounded our house. My father came outside with his rifle and started shooting at the UFO. That's when I got out of the car and told him that there were creatures around the bushes that surrounded our house. While my father was still shooting at the UFO, it flew directly up into the air and vanished. We rushed inside and locked the doors. My father called the sheriff's department to tell them what had just happened that night. But that same night, we had to make a statement on what happened regarding the UFO. To this day, I do not know why the UFO chose to mess with us. At night, I always wonder, what if those creatures would have gotten a hold of us? Or what if the UFO would have actually attacked us? This I may never ever know. Scary True Paranormal Story number 3. The Club. This story is one of my own, and it is a very scary, true story. My dad told me this a long time ago, and this story has never left my mind, as it is one of the scariest things I have ever heard. This took place in Corpus Christi, Texas in the 1950s. My dad said his dad, my grandpa, played accordion as a side job and was pretty good at it. He was outside his house playing the accordion around evening time when a man came by and introduced himself as John. He said he was in a band and played nightly at a nightclub in Corpus Christi. He said that my grandfather played really good accordion music and it sounded really nice. He wanted to know if my grandpa wanted to come out to the nightclub the following night and that he would also get paid for it. My grandfather was really excited about the job offer and agreed to it right away. The man told him to make sure he's there at 2 a.m. sharp. My grandfather found it pretty strange that he had to be there at the club so late, but he didn't ask any questions. The following night, my grandfather showed up to the dance hall exactly at 2 a.m. He was dressed really nice and had his accordion strapped around him. He said that as soon as he walked into the nightclub, he felt a strange, weird feeling as if everyone was looking at him. Everyone was dressed in suits and tuxedos. Music was playing and everyone was drinking and having a really good time dancing. He made his way to the side of the stage, and there he saw John, the man that invited him to come to the club. John saw my grandfather and walked up to him and asked him if he knew what song they were playing at the moment. My grandfather said yes, he did know the song and knew how to play it. So my grandfather got on stage and began to play his accordion. But he said about after 2 minutes of playing the song, he noticed that something didn't look right with John, the singer that was on stage at the time. He looked down at John's feet while he was singing, and to his shock and horror, John had goat feet. After seeing this, his whole body went cold. He quickly looked at the other band members and noticed that they had chicken feet. He stopped playing the accordion and looked around at the people dancing, and they all had animal feet and legs. Some people had goat feet, while others had chicken and pig feet. My grandfather was petrified. He couldn't move. Just then, he said the music stopped and everyone noticed that he knew how they looked. Everyone stopped dancing and they all stopped moving. They all looked at him with straight, serious faces. That's when he jumped off the stage and ran towards the door. He said he could hear everyone laughing at him. He finally made it out of the dance hall and ran all the way straight home. When he got home, he told my grandmother everything that had happened to him. The following morning, he went back to the club with some friends to show them where all this took place, and to his surprise and horror, the doors and windows were boarded up. The place looked run down and was falling apart. My grandfather was confused. He later found out that there was a fire years prior that burned down the dance hall, taking the lives of everyone that was there that dreadful night.